Oh no, it doesn't say my CPU usage on OBS.
Oh, it should say on like the bottom right corner when you're streaming, because right now it seems like there's no delay.
No delay whatsoever.
So I wonder if the stream is causing it. We might have to look
I'm
into it.
streaming right now.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. We restarted the window. Sounds like it's
Display
working well
your
there.
face. For the
Oh, yeah.
people. For
Let
the
me do that.
people.
There's my face. Okay.
Boom. Everything
All right.
looks.
Let's just try to hop back into it. I don't know that.
When you displayed your face, it became bad.
Did it? I can hear you. You're.
Yeah, you're about to start breaking up. I can tell. Your connection is muy no bueno.
Let me. I'm gonna not display my face then. In that case, just leave me blank.
Yeah. Hey, connection. Everything is wonderful.
Oh, good. It's my
Yeah.
face that's causing problems.
Yeah. Corey's face causing problems, guys. We're gonna go faceless Corey for the rest of the podcast. Let's rip it.
All right, we're back to it. Sorry about that. My face is causing problems, we found. I'm going to stop displaying my video. I think that's causing us to slow down for some reason. I've got a really big face, and it's just too much to fit through the internet tubes.
His face is huge. Donald Trump huge.
All right, this will be much better. That was like really hard to communicate, and I apologize we didn't do something about it sooner.
Yeah.
We were talking about the mana pool and the lack thereof. I'm going to spoil another card for us. I know I said I was going to try not to, but we got to talk about this one because it pertains to this whole mana pool situation. And that's Llanowar Elves is back in Dominaria, which is like kind of a big deal for Standard. But it simply says tap, add green. Boom, done, simple. And I think that the point is we're going to keep things as simple and simplistic as possible for new players. There's really no reason we need that extra bit of text. I had a conversation with a friend, and we kind of both agreed that when you're writing something, like maybe for a paper or something, usually the right way to do it is in the fewest words possible. And the same is true for Magic. There's no reason that we need to have all that extra information to, talk about having one green symbol to use for other cards.
Sure.
So I'm down. I'm on board. I can't imagine that they wouldn't errata cards like Upwelling and the one that you mentioned before our face problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll wait and see how that all goes. They did say refrain from asking questions until we have a chance to address these things. And as a teacher, I can totally relate to that. When I hand out a piece of music, kids are like, "What's this?" And I'm like, "Just wait, we'll get there."
Yeah. Fair enough.
Having had this spoiled, I should say, we are going to just wait for clarification when it's due.
That's
Anyways, let's move on. There's something I want to talk about. I think it'll take up the bulk of the rest of the podcast, unless there's anything else you wanted to cover this week.
Nah, ship it.
Okay. Well, like I said, I've been playing a lot of Modern, and Modern is in a very interesting place these days. I think Modern was in a very interesting place before the unbans, and it got even more interesting after the unbans. Some might argue less interesting. But the pillars of the format have shifted. I think that there's a new emphasis on certain decks. I want to talk about those and see if maybe we can even identify the same decks as the pillars of the format, quote unquote.
All right.
Just before the unbans happened, we had like Hollow One and Mardu Pyromancer sneaking up. There were new decks being created in this old format, which is really cool. We've got new decks popping up every day. So now that Jace and Bloodbraid have been unbanned, and we really are kind of unsure as to how to include them in our decks and what to do with them in Modern, there's a lot of kind of sort of uncertainty about what's the best thing out there and what's the best strategy. But I think that that's starting to sort of take shape now that we've got a few results under our belt. Now, before we even talk anything about the Star City Games tournament that happened last weekend, I want to talk about personal experience from Moto, because the way that they roll out the results on the dailies now, they just give you this big dumping of decks, and it's basically like every possible deck that's 5-0 an event. So it doesn't quite tell you that there were 37 Tron decks and there was only one blue-white control deck. Instead, it tells you there's one Tron deck and one blue-white control deck that's listed. So from my experience, I've identified a few decks as the most commonly played Modern decks these days, and maybe the most difficult for a plethora of the decks that I've been testing to beat. Have you been playing Modern enough to identify such things?
I've been playing a ton of Standard.
Ton of Standard, okay.
I have been. I've been getting my head beat in with the 5-color ramp deck and not having a care in the world, because it's been a delightful time.
Well, then this will be interesting. I want you to tell me what you expect to be the the most commonly played decks in the last 2 weeks or so,
Um,
based on what you see in the results.
I'm not even going to look at the results. I'm just going to spitball it off the top of my head what I would expect the best decks to be.
Yeah, go ahead, pick 5.
Jund,
Yep.
uh, Mono Green Tron, uh,
Okay.
another Bloodbraid Elf deck, whether it's Teamer or it's Naya Zoo with like Collected Company or like just like a bunch of value 3-drop creatures.
Yep.
Uh, I'm not sure what Jace deck. My first thought is Grixis because discard is really good against Bloodbraid Elf because you take Bloodbraid Elf and they don't get their free spells. But if there's a control deck, it's going to be Grixis. And then I'm going to have to play I'm going to have to say Black Red Casino. That's what I like to call it, the Hollowed One deck. Because it's still just super powerful and can just casino you on turn 1 or 2 and you're just like, well, I'm dead. All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
But those would be my 5 guesses.
Those are pretty reasonable guesses. And now, keep in mind that this is based on my own experiences, but I've played a lot of Moto, and I do play a lot of Moto. I think that the 3 most commonly played decks since the unbanning, at least how it's shaken out, are, yes, Jund for sure is one. Another one is Burn. There's just been a ton of Burn. And it might be that people are just taking advantage of others trying to figure out the format, and they just want to play the fastest way to get to 0.
So, let me tell you why Burn is really good right now.
Why?
Turn 1, fetch shock Thoughtseize.
Yeah.
Your opponent
there's a lot of that
if your opponent wants to start at 15, you only need 5 burn spells. Like, deal. Absolutely. I'm in.
Yeah. So there's a lot of Burn, there's a lot of Tron, and there's a lot of I already said
You said Jund.
So the other one is Tron. There's a lot of Tron. Misspoke.
I wasn't sure if Burn would be insane still, or if it would get held down by the like plethora of Jace decks, by like the Jace decks interacting with the burn spells and creatures with like early spell snares and discard, and then slamming Jace, whittling through the opponent's leftover cards, and then just fate sealing them into nothingness. I wasn't sure if that would be a thing.
That's the problem is those decks don't really exist. So they do. People are trying them, but that's certainly not what I would consider one of the top 5 decks right now.
That's fair.
There's really not a lot of Jace happening. In fact, there's just a lot of like big mana and super aggressive attack decks. And I think that those 3 decks, Tron, Jund, and Burn, right now, if you were to go to an event this weekend, you have to be able to beat those 3. And if you can't beat those 3, if you've got a bad matchup against any one of those, you're in for a really long day. I've been testing that Naya Bloodbraid Elf deck for a while. Yeah. I talked about that 2 weeks ago on the podcast. I was really psyched about that. In the first week, it was very good. I like 5-0'd a league and 4-1 twice in a row. And I was thinking that it was like the deck. But then I started running into a bunch of Tron decks, and there's not a lot that deck can do against Tron, despite having like some Ghost Quarters and Night of the Reliquaries in the deck. It's just like keeping up with that is not even worth trying. You just got to race.
I mean, is your deck a Collected Company deck, or is it just like straight up like beatdown deck?
It was like a Bloodbraid in place of Collected Company, like green-white value. Like it was like a mid-range deck. It was a more mid-range deck than Jund. And it was good at beating Jund, but it lost to Tron, and that was enough to make me put it away.
I was asking because like if you're mid-range like Bloodbraid deck, if you're playing like Collected Company, you could get away with like a bunch of Magus of the Moons.
Yeah, could.
And then just like blow your opponent out.
Yeah, I thought about putting just straight up Blood Moon in the deck to get off of Bloodbraid Elf, but that's kind of where I'm going with this. So hold on. The next thought was I didn't want to lose to Tron anymore, so I wanted to look into like a blue-white mid-range deck. And I was thinking like, what's good against Tron? Well, there are decks that main deck 4 Spreading Seas, and there are decks that main deck Field of Ruin, and there are decks that main deck 8 of all of those. And those are like the blue-white decks, right? Yeah. And so that seems to be the best option against Tron because I just have all of those ways of slowing them down or stopping them.
Yeah, of interacting with their mana, yeah.
However, we talked about the inevitability before, and it's like you can play a Spreading Seas on an Urza land, but it's eventually going to go away, or they're just going to have more cards to find that, another copy of that land.
Yeah, or it's just going to be a land that can cast them, an Ugin or something, and then you just get wrecked.
Yeah, so it only does so much. It really just prevents like, one turn of getting smashed by Ugin or Ulamog. So that was a little discouraging too for that reason, though that deck was good against Jund with all the planeswalkers that I was running. And it was good against it was decent against Burn. I had like Blessed whatever,
Alliance.
the one that gains 4, Blessed Alliance, yeah. Then I'm looking at the results from this weekend, and I think that the best way is to go even harder on the destroy land plan, and that just might be
just Blood Moons,
premium.
Stone Rains, just like
Blood Moon, Stone Rain, Molten Rain, Movali Acid Moss.
Jesus.
So
what a world we live in, where we're casting Movali Acid Moss for on turn 3. Lordy day.
Yeah,
all right.
So we've got an open where Andrew Wolvers wins with green red Ponza.
I mean, I'm going to look at the deck now because I'm always interested. I like to kill a man's land as much as the next man. This person said no to Mavoli Acid Moss. They wanted all 3 mana Stone Rains because they have 4 Bloodbraid Elves.
Now, this is a deck that I looked at, Daryl, and I considered before building the Naya deck, but I didn't want to play Bloodbraid Elf and hit like an Arbor Elf or a Utopia Sprawl. However, apparently that's okay to do when you can also hit like a Blood Moon or a Molten Rain.
Yeah, I mean, I see, like, I like that he cut all the frills and just said, you've got to beat Inferno Titan with like 2 lands. Go for it. I'd love to see you try that one.
Now he also hit a Nisa Vastwood Seer, or excuse me, Nisa Voice of Zendikar.
Yeah, that one I'm not so sure about. That one is
that's a juicy Bloodbraid Elf target when you're up against control.
Right, but like in my version of the world, wouldn't you just want a Dominaria raid?
No, not with this deck because it doesn't. Well, I don't think you do. I think you want this. You want to just go wide and.
I mean, that's fair. I just like Dominaria raid was the thing I thought of.
Yeah, Dominaria Raid's good. That's the one I was playing in the Zoo deck.
Yeah.
But this is not. I don't think this is the deck for that.
No, not the deck for that. All right, fair enough.
But yeah, let's go on the list. This has got the Arbor Elf Utopia Sprawl package. Utopia Sprawl, by the way, is a much needed reprint, and it's coming out on Friday in Masters 25. Thank the Lord.
Yeah.
Card's like $4.
Yeah.
It's got 4 Arbors, 4 Utopia Sprawls, 2 Birds of Paradise, 4 Bloodbraid Elf, of course, 3 Inferno Titans. I've seen decks like this running Inferno Titans, but not the full 3. We really want to burn some faces with this guy.
Yeah.
4 Tireless Tracker, 1 Courser of Crufix, 2 Pia and Quran Nalar, which has become a staple of Modern. It has been like a sideboard mainstay for like Grixis decks.
It's red Lingering Souls.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, red Lingering Souls is insane.
Yeah, it's got 1 Chandra Torch of Defiance, 1 Nisa Voice of Zendikar, 4 Blood Moon, 4 Utopia Sprawl, I already said that, 2 Bolt, only 2, 3 Molten Rain, and 4 Stone Rain. Then it's got a bunch of lands, including a Kessig Wolf Run.
Yeah, kill a man.
Sometimes you got to trample with that Inferno Titan.
Teach a man to fish, you'll feed him for a day. Kill a man's land, and you'll starve him out to death. Sideboard's got some Trinispheres for when you destroy all the lands of the Storm player and they can never play the game again. Kitchen Finks for burn. Obstinate Baloth for burn. Scav Jews for burn. Ancient Grudges for affinity. A Thrun, another Chandra, some Angers, and a Shatterstorm. So
my point with this is I think that this is a really great choice. I was a little bit unsure of the whole Ponza thing at first, and I thought that it's a little bit like Tunnel Vision on a few decks. But those decks are just so prevalent that apparently it's possible to just take down an entire open with such a thing.
Here's my thing. I want to know the look on this guy's face when he goes, turn 1 Arbor Elf, and his opponent goes, turn 1 Sleight of Hand. And then after post board, he just untaps and goes, land, Trinisphere, go. Like, I want to know how that felt for him. Because then you just followed up with Stone Rain, Molten Rain, Stone Rain, Blood Moon, go. And your opponent's just like, well, I can't cast a spell ever in this game. Thanks for playing. Like, that was fun.
That's enough to that slows him down enough to just take over entirely with the land destruction.
Yeah.
They can find their wipe away, but by the time they've already lost 3 or 4 lands out of it.
Yeah,
so
they can't cast the wipe away.
Yeah. Now there are some decks that can stand up to this pretty well, but the decks that I identified, Jund, Tron, and Burn, have like either a greedy mana base or like a very important mana base in the case of Tron. But I think even Burn is pretty susceptible to like even a Blood Moon doesn't seem terrible against Burn until you consider the fact that they need their white for 8 of their spells in their deck, and if they're drawing duds, that's no good for them.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that this is a good choice right now. Destroying lands is in style.
I mean, I've never said no to a good land destruction deck. I'm the guy that has definitely restoration handled a few Terastodons in EDH for fun and profit.
Yeah.
And my friends don't really like me much anymore. But yeah, this is not what I expected to win. If you had told me that this was the deck I'd have seen win the Open this weekend, I might have called you crazy.
Yeah. Now there was a lot of Storm this weekend too. I was surprised to see that. Caleb Shearer, of course, is a Storm guru.
The master.
Third place with Gift Storm. There, the finals included this Ponza deck against a different Storm deck. So it seems like maybe that's another situation where people are being like, hey, you forgot about me. Watch me combo out while you try to dirtle with your Jace the Mind Sculptor. And that seems like a good plan as well. The Classic had quite a bit of Storm too. And there's one deck I want to talk about in the Classic that also does a good job of attacking the meta.
I think I know which one it is, but go ahead.
This is the 10th place Esper Taxis deck. Is that what you're talking about?
That was not the deck I wanted to talk about.
Okay. Well, this is another one. As I was kind of thinking to myself, what is a good way to attack Tron? I was really kind of angry. I was angsty towards Tron after losing to it so many times, and I wanted to just play the deck that did the most damage to them, so I could, avenge my previous losses. And I thought to myself, well, there's a deck that Ghost Quarters with Leonin Arbiters on the table, and that seems pretty good against Tron. And that would be Death and Taxes. This deck, however, does not play Leonin Arbiter. This is blue, black, white, Esper Taxes with fetch lands.
It plays a giant pile of Aven Mind Sensors, though.
Yeah, it does. It plays 3 Aven Mind Sensors in place of those guys, which in a lot of contexts is just much better, right? It's a flyer. It's a flash card. It can catch them on their own fetch lands much better. I like this a lot.
There's one thing I don't like about this.
What's that?
There is a very distinct lack of Dark Confidant.
There is a lack of Dark Confidant. I think that is just a lack of space for that Dark Confidant.
I know. Whenever you're telling me that you're going to play a deck full of Grizzly Bears, I'm just interested in seeing you put some Dark Confidants in it, because he is the best of the Grizzly Bears by a mile. But
all right, let me go down the list here so the audience knows what we're talking about too. This is 3 Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, of course.
I'll put it on the screen.
Hollow Scholar.
So go ahead.
3 Aven Mind Sensor, 3 Eldrazi Displacer, 3 Flicker Wisp, 3 Spell Queller, 3 Wasteland Strangler, 1 Glenelendra Archmage, which is a 3 and a blue for a 2/2 flyer. Pay a blue, sacrifice it, and counter target non-creature spell, and it has Persist. Fantastic card to reset with the Flicker Wisp.
Yep.
It's got 2 Hostage Takers. Okay, we're getting spicy now. 3 Thought-Knot Seers, 4 Path to Exiles, 4 Aether Vials, a bunch of lands, including 3 Ghost Quarters, 3 Eldrazi Temples, and 2 Shambling Vents, excuse me.
Really? I think my favorite part about this whole deck is the 1 sideboard Dusk Dawn.
Yeah, that's a very good card.
So I'm going to murder your Tarmogoyfs, all of them. Get your Tarmogoyfs out of here. And then after I kill all your Tarmogoyfs, at some point, I'm going to pick up my 11 2-power idiots and put them into my hand, and then cast a few of them and say, how do you like me now?
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not to mention, if they Liliana you, and you've got that in your graveyard, you can just cast the Dawn.
Yeah, absolutely. Just dawn them, moving on with our life.
Yeah,
I'll pull that up on the screen for everyone.
So that is very good against John.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things in this deck that are just really great against those 3 decks that I've identified as the big problems. But what it does lack, it doesn't have a whole lot against Burn, other than the fact that it's just got creatures to block its creatures. And it's got Thalia to attack its Burn spells.
I mean, you got Thalia to attack Burn spells. You got multiple Glenelendra Archmages to use as counter spells later in the game after you start taxing them. You've got a Burrington Forge Tender that you can basically use as a counter spell.
Yeah, one.
I mean, these are all like very minimal, important things to be able to do. So
Sure. I would want to put some core firewalkers in here, knowing how much burn there is. But maybe that wasn't the case in paper. Maybe that's just a moto sort of thing because the deck is so affordable. I don't know. Um, anyways,
yeah,
the biggest and most exciting interaction for me is the hostage takers. I mean, there's hostage taker is a card that has been fringe playable in modern and seen some sideboard play in some Grixis decks. But Hostage Taker really shines when you've got your Aether Vial set to 4 counters, which this incentivizes because it also plays Thought Knot Seer and Glen Elendra. You
yeah.
can flash him into play, and then you have all that mana left over to use his ability and put their creature into play. I mean, how great is that?
It's fantastic.
It's awesome. And then even more, you can flash a Flicker Wisp into play, blink your Hostage Taker, and do it all over again. That's so good. If you wanted to, you can process that exiled creature with a Wasteland Strangler,
Yeah.
which is pretty fancy.
My computer might cut out because my daughter is microwaving something, and it kills my power if too many lights are on.
Whoops.
Yeah. But yeah, Wasteland Strangler in this deck is insane. Like, you have so many different functional ways to use it between Tidal Sculler, Eldrazi Display, or not Eldrazi Display, Flicker Wisp, and Hostage Shaker, and Thought Knot Seer, that you're going to kill something. You're going to get your -3/-3 out of it. So...
yeah, he does a lot of clever things with that Wasteland Strangler that a lot of white-black Eldrazi and Taxes decks can't leverage.
Yeah.
Spellqueller is another
one
I
forgot about that card. Yeah, that's adorable.
Sometimes it's great to just Wasteland Strangler your own guys just to get rid of their spell that's exiled.
Yeah, their spell is better. Really, I think my favorite thing about Spellqueller is just spell quelling them, and then like having that Aether Vial in 3 instant speed Flicker Wisping their Spellqueller, and then they get back like a Remand or some dumb garbage, and you're just like, yeah, that doesn't do anything. Sorry.
I did test this deck in one game before the podcast tonight, and I had Spellquellered their Supreme Verdict, which is obviously the best thing to do with that card, right?
Yeah.
And I had a Thalia on the board, so they had to wait till turn 5 to play the Supreme Verdict in the first place, and then when he played it, I took it, right? Now, if I were to kill or blink my Spellqueller with Thalia on the board, he has an opportunity to cast Supreme Verdict for free. However, he cannot do it unless he pays 1 additional mana from Thalia, so it gets fizzled. Is that correct?
It actually stays in exile.
Stays in exile.
Mm-hmm. So you'll attempt to cast it, you can't. So it will stay in exile. Like, it's the same thing as when you remove the last counter from Ancestral Visions. If you stifle the trigger that happens to cast it, the Ancestral Visions just stays in exile. It never gets to unsuspend.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
That seems like a corner case, but
because then you also came up. Well, you also block it against Snapcaster because, like, if you strand their Supreme Verdict in exile with Thalia, they can't Snapcast it. They never makes it back to their graveyard like we would with Wasteland Strangler.
Yeah.
So that's actually pretty relevant, but like, you never know when it's going to happen.
Yeah, no kidding. Now, there's not a lot of burn in either of these two events, so maybe my my read of the meta is a little different than reality. There is a lot of Jund and there is a lot of Tron.
So this
way more Storm than I expected.
So there's a deck I want to talk about.
Yeah, what is it?
I'm gonna put it on the screen. It's from the Classic. It's Blue-Red Prison.
No.
In 5th place.
You would want to talk about that.
Oh my god, this deck is great. This deck is everything I want in life. I'm going to roll down it, and I'm going to explain it for the folks at home. So we have a Tezzeret the Seeker, 4 Whir of Invention, 2 Chalice of the Void, or 4 Chalice of the Void, 2 Engineering Explosives, 4 Mishra Bauble, 4 Mox Opal, a Tormod's Crypt, a Welding Jar, 3 maps, 3 Expedition maps, a Grafdigger's Cage, a Pithing Needle, 2 Sorcerer's Spyglass, a Crucible of Worlds, 4 Ensnaring Bridge, a Bottled Cloister, which is a 4-mana artifact from Ravnica. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, remove your hand from the game face down. At the beginning of your upkeep, return all cards removed from the game with Bottled Cloister to your hand. Draw a card.
That's so cool.
So it completely and totally enables Ensnaring Bridge. So like, your bridge is always on 0 on your opponent's turn. If they kill the Bottled Cloister, you don't get your hand back.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is very important to note with that card. A Witchbane Orb. an Artificer's Intuition, which I don't think anyone knows what this does. So it's 1 to blue for an enchantment. Pay blue, discard an artifact from your hand. Search your library for an artifact card with CMC 1 or less. Reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle your library. A Gare per Aether Grid, and then 23 lands. Academy Ruins, 4 Darksteel Citadel, a Field of Ruin, 4 Ghost Quarter, 2 Inventor's Fair, an Ipnu Rivulet, which is the new desert, the Blue Mill Desert, 3 Island, a Mountain, an Oboro, a Tech Edge, and 4 Teleria Wests. And the sideboard is 3 Welding Jar, 2 Defense Grid, 2 Spellskite, 2 Sun Droplet, a Torpor Orb, another Aether Grid, 2 Metallic Rebuke, which is the improvised mana leak, another Tezzeret the Seeker, and a Possessed Portal, which is if a player would draw a card, that player skips that draw instead. At the end of each turn, each player sacrifices a permanent unless he or she discards a card from his or her hand.
Oh, I play that card in EDH sometimes. That's just brutal.
Yeah. So, if you haven't really figured out what's happening here, it took me a minute to stare at the deck for a while to figure it out. So what's going on here? No, there's one very large and slow machination that's happening here. And that is that there are 2 ways to kill your opponent in this deck. There's a Gare per Aether Grid, so tap all your artifacts that don't matter if they're untapped or not, to deal 1 damage to your opponent or their creatures or whatever. And then there's a single Ipnu Rivulet to mill your opponent out with. So you mill your opponent with the Ipnu Rivulet by sacrificing it. You play your 1 Crucible of Worlds. You get back your Ipnu Rivulet, and you keep doing that until your opponent dies. While you hide behind an Ensnaring Bridge and a Witchbane Orb.
I was wondering what that Ipnu Rivulet was doing in there.
It's your kill condition. You
suppose.
mill your opponent out. Yeah. And then you have a single Tormod's Crypt in your deck to exile their graveyard when you hit their Emrakul.
Nice.
With your Ipnu Rivulet. You also Ipnu Rivulet yourself to find your pieces. If you've got the board locked up with some chalices and a bridge.
Yeah. That is pretty awesome. And the whole what is it? Oh shit, what's the card called? Expedition Map package. There's a lot that you can do with that as well. If you're not just looking for your combo pieces, and you can dig out like a Field of Ruin or Inventor's Fair, Tech Edge or Teleria West.
Yeah. There's 6 land destruction lands in this deck.
Yeah.
So it actually helps it have some game against Tron. And you can also Chalice the Void to turn off all their 1-drop things. So, I mean, you do turn off your 3 Expedition Map. You only turn off 5 of your cards, which are 3 Map, a Grafdigger's Cage, and a Pithing Needle. But you could just whir those cards into play. So,
yes, you can. This looks like a hell of a lot of fun to play.
I don't know if this is
not very fun to play against.
I don't know if this is fun. I don't know if this is my definition of a good time. But
it's fun in its own maniacal way.
Yeah, this deck is something else.
I'm surprised we haven't had more decks that are just like Gear per Aether Grid engines.
Ensnaring Bridge.
In Modern. There's a lot, like Ensnaring Bridge and Gear per Aether Grid. There's a lot you can do with that. A lot of artifact decks will play Hauling Mine, for example, and that's a card that incentivizes you to tap your artifacts, right? So things like that. This has, just a corner case, of course, but this has plenty of gas for such a thing, and that card is just really, really good at killing everything that's a problem.
So Aether Grid used to be how I won the game with eggs shortly after they released it, when they unbanned Thopter Foundry. Because you'd use Thopter Foundry to make infinite mana, like Thopter Sword, with your whatchamajigget, your Karklan Ironworks, and then you tap all the Thopters to Aether Grid to kill your opponent.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so
sweet.
That is also an option you have available to you. But this is adorable, and I'm kind of horrified by it.
Do you think this is going to be replicated in?
I mean, 2 people have already 5-0'd with it on Moto.
Have they really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So this is maybe something that has existed and just kind of flying under the radar. I did not notice that. I see 3 5-0s.
Yeah, two different people. One guy did it twice, and then.
Oh, gotcha.
And then another player did it again. Yeah. But yeah,
Wow.
this deck is sweet. I don't think anyone's going to enjoy ever playing against it, but I kind of want to play it. I have most of the cards for it. I don't have the bridges.
Yeah,
Good,
there's a
good,
lot of expensive cards in there. Local.
GoodOldManTraders.com, baby. Let's go.
Yeah. No, I haven't mentioned this, and I would be remiss to close out this cast without saying that humans is also a huge part of this metagame. There's a lot of humans.
Yeah, absolutely.
So ensnaring bridge decks are pretty strong right now. There's not a lot that humans can do against such a deck, aside from like hoping into their like if they play Reclamation Sage or something along those lines. I know that a lot of them play like Kataki War's Wage in the side.
So they
But there's
actually
not much that humans
play
can do.
Vithian Renegade is what it is. It's a green-red 1 for like a 3/2 that destroys an artifact.
I haven't seen a lot of that in these decks, but yeah, okay. Vithian Renegades, some of them have it.
Yeah.
But there's one Vithian Renegades in the sideboard of this deck.
Yeah, that's not a lot. They'll mostly be leading on their Kitesail freebooters to take your bridges before you get them into play. But when you have four bridges, and 4 whirs, you have a gazillion bridges.
Yeah, a gazillion, literally.
Yeah, an actual gazillion bridges.
All right. Well, I think things went better since we have disabled my face from this podcast. So thanks for hanging in there till the end.
Thank you for dealing with Faceless Corey. I'm going to do a quick non-magic moment before we sign off.
Yeah, what is it?
I don't know if you've heard of this game yet by Mega Crit. It's called Slay the Spire.
Video game or board game?
It's a video game.
Okay, go on. Have not.
So, do you like deck building games?
Yes.
Do you like roguelike games?
Yes.
It's both of them put together.
Oh, shit. And it got a 10 out of 10. Very positive reviews.
Yeah. I literally bought it. One of my friends was like, dude, it's great. You got to play it with us. So I hopped on Discord and I watched him play a game of it or whatever. And I'm like, all right, this game's gas. I'm going to buy it. So I bought it. And I literally, I don't even know what time I bought it on like a Saturday. But I look up and my fiance's just staring at me and she's like, are you okay? Like, I really want to spend time with you. And I'm like, what do you mean? I've only been playing this game for like 2 hours. I looked at the clock. It was midnight. I'm like, oh, I've been playing this game for a lot longer than 2 hours. So the game is amazing. If you have not played it, please do. If you have, how do you beat it with there's 2 factions. There's like a red faction. It's all about like strength. And there's like a rogues, like sneaky faction. I've crushed the game with the red faction. I can't figure out the green ones to save my life. They're like, they have less hit points and they try to do like fancy weird stuff, and I'm too dumb to play it. It's like the best deck I've drafted with them is like a storm deck, and I still can't figure it out. So like, but I would check that game out if you like roguelikes and deck builders.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. Speaking of deck builders, and while we're on the topic of non-magic, I picked up Clank in Space this last weekend.
Yeah?
Have you ever played that game?
I've not.
Any of the Clank games, kind of the same idea. Actually, similarly, it is a deck builder that has like kind of an exploration element to it.
Sure.
And Clank in Space is different because it has a modular board that you can kind of flip over the tiles and have sort of different connections to them.
Yeah.
It's got like a lot of rules. It seemingly has a lot of rules, but if it's taught to someone, it can be taught with just a few rules to start and kind of expanded on as the game progresses. So that's kind of good news. But this is the sequel to Clank. I think it's just called Clank the original one, which is like a dungeon explorer to like go and slay a dragon. But the premise is you are a character that is put on a ship of the evil lord something Triss. He destroys everything.
Lord Farquaad, got it. All right.
Yeah, Lord Farquaad, and your job is to go and infiltrate the ship, excuse me, and steal one of like 6 options for artifacts that are on the ship. Each of them has like a different point value, ranging from like 5 to 30. Obviously, more points is better. Yeah. But when you go for the more point value, the higher point value ones, you're risking more, because you're going deeper into the ship, and you have to get out of the ship too. He's gonna like attack you as you go through the ship because you basically cause clank, which is sound. You're basically being clunky and making noise when you're trying to explore the ship. And the more sound you make, the more aware of him, more aware of you he is.
Yeah.
And so every once in a while when he attacks, you have to draw one of the cubes out of this bag. And if your cube is drawn, that's functionally a damage on your character. Ooh. And so you have cards that represent like attack, and buy like every deck builder does, but then there's
Yeah.
also a movement card that lets you move from space to space on the ship.
Oh Lord.
And so there's tons of loot that you can acquire. There are different things that you can purchase throughout the game, and lots of different options as far as how you explore. But it's a hell of a game. It's a lot of fun.
Nice.
2 to 4 players, takes about an hour. I'd
Nice.
recommend it.
I'll have to check it out. All right. We're done being weird nerds that don't talk about Magic anymore. I think that ends the podcast.
Yeah, man.
Yeah? All right.
Take it easy.
Take it easy, everybody.
See you next time.
Yep.